there, welcome to the Big 7 Stories on Wells Television. I am Bolanle Odueku Ayola. First and foremost, I want to thank you so much for always engaging with our content here on Wells Television. Thank you for every like, thank you for every share, every comment, and every post, every form of engagement. We really, really appreciate you. Now, every week on the Big 7 Stories, we count down the 7 stories that everyone is talking about, from the news that shakes the nation to the events that are shaping our world. All you have to know is that if it made the headlines, then you find it right here on the Big 7 Stories on Wells Television. Now, let's get into the Big 7. Our top story this week is a deadly and deeply troubling attack in Kwara State. At least from what we have heard, 162 residents of the rural communities of Woro and neighboring Nuku were killed when gunmen stormed their villages. This is one of the deadliest recent assaults that we have seen in Nigeria. Now, according to the Nigerian Red Cross, the death toll now stands at 162, and they're warning that it could rise because more bodies are being recovered from the forest, from remote areas. Now, the attack happened in the Kayama local government area late on Tuesday this week, and Monday night stretched into the early hours of the morning, leaving homes and shops in ruins. Some eyewitnesses said that the assailants arrived on motorcycles. They went through the villages, they set fire to buildings, they executed residents, they tied up people, they kidnapped some. Some who survived this deadly, gruesome incident said they fled into nearby bushes to escape the violence. Now, what we know is that security officials have launched investigations. There's a joint task force of the police, military, and forest guards. They have been deployed to Woro and the surrounding areas to restore calm and prevent further attacks. The President Bola Tinubu, has also condemned the killings as a beastly attack. He has ordered an army battalion to the region under Operation Savannah Shield to protect vulnerable communities and to track down those responsible. In the midst of all this, international reactions have also come in. The United Nations, the United States, Turkey, they have all strongly condemned this massacre, and there's been calls for urgent action in addressing Nigeria's worsening security crisis. Now, some of the local leaders in that area, as well as other rights groups, have described this assault as a stark reminder of the expanding militant violence that we're seeing beyond the traditional conflict zone, which before now was the northern area, northwest, the northeast. But now we're seeing it in Kwara State, which is the north central and the major border area to the southwest and the southeast. And these civil agencies are urging for faster security responses, stronger protection for rural communities across the country, because according to a particular interview from one of the leaders in the community, he said when the whole killing started, they contacted the army base and it took them at least 10 hours to get there. And so it makes one wonder, what is the hope of the common man when it comes to being secure in the country? We've also heard that these attacks were carried out by some terrorists who had before then sent a letter to the community, telling them that this is our doctrine, this is our belief, and we want you to believe in what we believe in. We want you to renounce your citizenship of Nigeria and come join us. And the residents of this area did not, bend to their wishes, and allegedly this is what, brought up their wrath and led to this gruesome incident. The full impact, I will say, of this tragedy is honestly still unfolding. The families of the grieving loved ones, as well as their communities, are still struggling to recover. This attack is among the deadliest so far that we've seen this year, and we're just in February. And it has reignited debates about Nigeria's security policy, our military strategy, as well as the protection of civilians in vulnerable regions in Nigeria. Our second story this week will focus on heated political debates in Abuja over the Electoral Amendment Act Bill 2026. What is this? It's a piece of legislation that is meant to reform Nigeria's election laws ahead of the 2027 polls. Now, lawmakers have passed this bill, but that's the National Assembly. But the controversy that happened this week erupted over whether the Senate rejected or retained the provision for electronic transmission of results. So on Wednesday, the Senate completed the third reading of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026, sending it forward after hours of clause-by-clause consideration. Now, among the most contentious issues were the issue of how results from polling units are transmitted during election. This matter is generally seen as being central to transparency and credibility during the elections. Now, initially, we had heard several media reports had suggested or indicated that the Senate had rejected a mandatory provision for electronic transmission of results from polling units to INEC's IREV. That's the INEC's result viewing portal, IREV. And many people had come out to say that then the review was an exercise in futility. Then it means that the Senate also is not listening to Nigerians and does not want accountability and transparency, and they're opening the door for manipulation. However, same Wednesday, Senate leaders and opposition lawmakers alike rose up and said they were going to clarify the situation. The Senate Minority Caucus and senior senators, they said that the upper chamber did not reject the electronic transmission outright. They say that the amendment was rewarded. Now, they said they removed the strict requirement for a mandatory, so what we had before was a mandatory real-time transmission. And they said they removed that due to their concerns about infrastructure, network challenges, but they say they kept the electronic transmission legally intact in the law. They say that, what was passed still allows the electronic results transmission, and that the confusion stemmed from how the clause was drafted and interpreted at plenary. Now, they have said that the final wording will be harmonized with the House of Representatives version before being sent to the president. But I'll take us through some of the other reforms that were also passed by the Senate. They rejected the proposed 10-year jail term for PVC trafficking. Instead, they chose to keep it at a 2-year term with a higher fine. Also, they shortened the election timelines and aligning voter accreditation language with the current technology like BVAS. Also, we had the setting up of a conference committee with the House to reconcile differences between both chambers' versions before the bill is sent to the president. Basically, what that means is that we've not seen the end of this. Nigerians still have a chance at having their voices heard with the conference committee, whose jobs are to harmonize, or whose job is to harmonize the version of the House of Assembly, which many Nigerians and civil society organizations, as well as other politicians, seem to agree with, and harmonize that or reconcile the differences between that and that of the Senate as well. It's an ongoing development. It's a developing story. I will definitely bring you details next week. Now let's move to health, because our third story this week focuses on a rise in Lassa fever cases in Benue State, where the viral disease has not only spread among the general population, but it has now infected several health workers on the front lines of the response. Now, according to health officials in Makurdi, the state capital, at least 56 confirmed cases of Lassa fever have been reported in Benue, and 4 frontline health workers have been infected while caring for patients. Those infected include doctors and nurses, basically those who were treating some suspected and confirmed case. And this, of course, brings to the fore the heightened risk to healthcare personnel, when our infection prevention measures are strained. Lassa fever is, I'll just tell you what Lassa fever is. It's an acute viral hemorrhagic illness that is endemic to West Africa, including Nigeria. It's caused by the Lassa virus. It's typically transmitted to people through contact with food or household items contaminated by this infected rodents, especially the mastomys rats. You can also get it through direct contact with an infected person's bodily fluids especially in healthcare settings that don't have full infection control. Now, some of the symptoms of Lassa fever gradually begins with fever, headache, general weakness, nausea, muscle aches. Some of these symptoms can actually resemble common illnesses like malaria or typhoid at the onset. But when it gets severe, the disease can progress to bleeding. It can also lead to organ dysfunction, neurological issues, and even death, especially when there is no early detection and supportive care. Now, health authorities like the World Health Organization have stressed that early case recognition, isolation, and strict infection prevention practices, that's including the proper use of PPE, that's the personal protective equipment, are very important to limiting further spread, especially among healthcare workers. Now, there's an ongoing increase in confirmed cases of Lassa fever across multiple states in Nigeria, especially with this news of 4 health workers also being infected in Benue State. It shows us that the risk of infection in frontline facilities among public health officials are increasing. And so communities have been urged to improve hygiene, safely store food to deter rodents, store your food in plastic containers, basically covered containers where these rodents cannot get into. And if you have such symptoms, please seek prompt medical care at the first sight of symptoms or at the first sign of symptoms. Don't say, oh, it's probably malaria, I'll just take herbs, or it's typhoid, I'll just take herbs. Please get proper medical care. These are the major keys to containing the outbreak of Lassa fever. Moving on to our fourth story this week. All the 183 residents who were abducted during a church attack in Kuminwali community of Kaduna State have regained their freedom. This is following coordinated security operations and sustained efforts by the state and federal agencies. If you remember, on January 18, armed gunmen stormed 3 churches in Kuminwali village in the Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. They abducted 183 worshippers during services, men, women, and children, about 3 churches. And initially, there was confusion over the number of people who were kidnapped. We weren't sure about the number of people who were kidnapped, but Governor Obasani confirmed that the governor, the security agencies did confirm that 183 people. And just on Thursday, the governor Obasani then confirmed to newsmen that all 183 abducted persons have now returned to safety, including the 11 who were released soon after the attack, or who people said, didn't really follow the kidnappers to their den and they left them because they were elderly. 83 also regained freedom earlier this week, and the final 89 were rescued on Wednesday. So the freed victims were received at the Kaduna State Government House. We did see that video of them wearing uniformed attire, a polo shirt with same colors and all that. They said they are currently undergoing medical checks and psychosocial support. And the governor said the day was a day of joy and thanksgiving, thanking the president, the national security advisor, the DSS, the military, as well as other security agencies for their cooperation in securing the release of the captives. It's a very good one. We're happy that these people have been released, because we can only imagine what their families have been going through after nearly 3 weeks in captivity. It's a significant moment for their families and their communities. However, the broader issue of armed kidnappings and in rural communities in Nigeria, continues to challenge authorities nationwide. And of course, there's the question of what measures were employed in securing their release. Are we again saying that kinetic measures were employed? Is the Nigerian government indirectly funding these people by paying ransoms? That's a question that's hanging in the air, as nobody has answered it. Our fifth story this week focuses on a major internal reform in Nigeria's security and civil service agencies. Now, the Nigeria Customs Service has announced mandatory drug testing for all officers nationwide. They're joining similar moves across the Federal Public Service, to strengthen integrity and operational effectiveness. The management of the Nigeria Customs Service said this week that this new policy requires every officer, both the new officers and existing officers, to undergo regular drug screening as part of their service. They say this is aimed at ensuring that those who are entrusted with security responsibilities and enforcement duties are fully fit, alert, and free from substance abuse that could compromise their performance or public trust. So they say that the customs spokesman, Adewale Adeniyi, explained that the mandatory testing will apply across all commands and units, and that the results will be used to guide disciplinary action, wellness support, and deployment decisions as well. Of course, we can see that this move aligns with the Federal Public Service Policy, which was introduced by the presidency, requiring pre-employment drug testing for applicants to certain public offices. The Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation said that this step will uphold standards of conduct, accountability, and organizational integrity across government. This is a very good one. Hopefully, it helps to deter illicit behavior, to reassure members of the public, and to enhance trust in institutions that are charged with protecting Nigeria's borders and delivering public service. However, people have said, some critics of this have said that these policies should not stand alone. They should also be paired with support services as well as clear safeguards to ensure fairness in its implementation. And more than that, how about rather than just one general test at the beginning of their service, how about random tests as well? Let's move on to our next story in international news this week. Newly released court and government documents connected to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein have reignited global discussions about powerful networks, accountability, and how justice is pursued across borders. Now, it's known as the Epstein Files. It was published by the U.S. Department of Justice after many years of legal challenges and transparency demands. Now, the Epstein Files consist of tens of millions of pages of court records, correspondence, and investigatory materials from federal and state cases involving Epstein's criminal activities and associates. Now, U.S. officials have said that the release is part of an effort to comply with court orders and ensure maximum transparency in matters of significant public interest. These documents, of course, have attracted intense media and academic scrutiny because they include communications, contact records involving a wide range of individuals. And these individuals are no ordinary people. We have individuals from business, politics, academia, entertainment. Some of them have, in previous times, denied ties to Epstein. And there's so many analyses online about what's in the Epstein file and what's not in the Epstein file. But the thing is, these analyses, while they don't prove wrongdoing, they raise questions about the extent and nature of certain relationships. I can tell you now that many news organizations and journalists across the world are still sifting through this massive data set, looking for patterns that can shed light on how the investigations unfolded. You know, whether any actors inside or outside official circles acted inappropriately or with conflicting interests. And I can also tell you that among this trove of names, we also have one Nigerian name. I'm not going to be mentioning it. You can access the Epstein Files by yourself online. Now, this release, of course, has also renewed debate about legal accountability, especially how law enforcement agencies investigate, prosecute, and manage information that is related to high-profile cases with international dimension. At the same time, public discussions has been amplified by commentary in mainstream media and social platforms about the implications of the financial networks, legal protection, and the influence of wealth on justice. Analyzing the Epstein Files no doubt will take months, perhaps even years, and it may also influence how transparency and privacy will intersect in future high-stakes investigations. This takes us to our seventh and final stories, which is coming from the world of football. Arsenal and Manchester City will meet up in the Carabao Cup final. It's one of English football's earliest major showcase matches of the season. The 2026 Carabao Cup is scheduled for Sunday, March 22nd, 2026 at Wembley Stadium in London, with kickoff time around 4:30 p.m. local time. Now, it will pit Arsenal against defending champions Manchester City in a highly anticipated clash between the Premier League's top clubs. Now, Arsenal punched their ticket to the final with a dramatic 1-0 win over Chelsea. The goal was sealed in stoppage time and confirmed a 4-2 aggregate victory in the semi-final second leg at Emirates Stadium. This week, former Chelsea centre-back John Terry has been in the headlines for commenting on Arsenal's celebration after the semi-final victory. He said the team over-celebrated. He said he felt that their reaction was too much, especially given that it was a domestic cup final, and not, for example, the Champions League. This has, of course, sparked reactions across social media and football circles. But with both clubs also competing near the top of the Premier League, this Wembley final, of course, will be a major test of strength and depth for both Arsenal and Manchester City. And, of course, a chance for one of them to add silverware to an already intense season. And that's how the week looked. 7 big stories, one clear picture. Thanks for watching the Big 7 stories on Wells Television. I am Bolanle Udueku Ayola. Always remember, the news doesn't end when the bulletin does. So stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you next week with another Big 7. Bye-bye.